case, I'll go ahead and start the meeting of the June, the regular meeting of the June Library Board. Before we get started, folks, I do want to take a moment and let the staff and the public know that the board will be participating in racial equity training, as well as offering full support for the library climate improvement process, which we'll get more details on during the course of the meeting, correct?
Correct.
And I also, if I may just take a bit more time, and once again offer my apologies to the library board members, the staff, and the public for my handling of the public comment section of the May board meeting. To the degree that it was perceived that I was trying in some way to not allow Bree to talk, that was not my intent. It's a different approach that needs to be taken in these board meetings, and I'm fully aware of that now. And rest assured that I'm going to adhere to that process. Those that truly know me know that I value diversity in my professional and personal life. It is a core value that I have and that I practice every day. I have lived in the Indianapolis community since 1994 and have worked for the betterment of the Latino community and for the Indianapolis community as a whole, and I will continue to do so. But again, my apologies for the unintentional perception my actions may have caused. And now we'll move on. Angie, can we have a call to roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Bigsby.
Present.
Dr. Matata.
Present.
Ms. Payne.
Present.
Reverend Robinson.
He's muted.
Muted or not? There you go.
Thank you. Joe Salinas
Present.
and Ms. Tribble.
Present.
We do have a quorum.
All right, the chair recognizes a quorum. We're going to go to the public comment and communications part of our program. Folks, before we get started, at every library board meeting, we open with a time for public comment. We welcome feedback from the public about our Indianapolis libraries. And at this time, with the public may address the library board. If there are several of you representing the same group, please select a spokesperson. Please do not repeat the same comments someone else has offered. Please note that this public comment time is not the appropriate forum for commenting on matters related to alleged employee misconduct, as any such matters should be brought promptly to the attention of the board CEO or the Human Resource Department where matters can be properly addressed in compliance with established library policies and procedures. A 5-minute time limit will be allowed for each speaker. Each speaker should give their name and their address. Who's our first speaker? Well, we do have 2 letters. Is this?
No, we don't.
I'm sorry.
There's the list, Judge.
Oh, okay. Renita Mall? Where do they come up for?
They would come up to the end.
At
The
end
end
over here,
table.
Ms. Mall.
That's for you to read
Okay.
their names out.
Stand where, I'm sorry.
Sit
Oh,
right here.
There's a mic here. Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Renita Mall. I am a judicial officer who works with Judge Jose Salinas. I have been working with him and known him since 1997. I met him, I worked under Federal Judge Tanya Walton Pratt for almost 20-some years, as well as Judge Jose Salinas. At the time we practiced, well, I didn't practice, he practiced at her, excuse me, in her presence. Working with Judge Salinas, I could say it's almost like you are free to do what you do. We respect each other. We respect our team. I oversee 5 individuals on my team who are all African Americans. I have observed him work with and supervise over different groups of his problem solving, which is his drug treatment program. At this time, we have 3 or 4 male, Caucasian males that he supervises over. He oversees 3 females, Caucasian females, and pretty much we deal with a lot of different group of individuals that come in that are, I can say, are troubled individuals, from dealing with male and female drugs, dealing with male and female domestic violence, dealing with male and female, you name it, we do it. I can say that he is a very, very fair individual. He has to sort out each and every last one of hear all of our issues, hear all of our problems, hear all of our concerns. He has to deal with a lot of stuff, and he diffuses a lot of things that we all get along as a family. We learned that working with him that you're a family 7.5 hours a day, 37 hours a week, 75 hours every 2 weeks. We do a lot. We come in at 8 a.m., we leave maybe by 5, 6, maybe 10 in the evening, but we all have to end with a smile because, today's today, tomorrow's a new day, and we move on with our next day. As for what happened yesterday is yesterday. Today, we just come in with a good morning, good evening, everyone, enjoy your day. I can't say anything negative because I learned a lot. I started when I was 21 years old working with them, and I am 46 years old today. So I have grown in the industry to know, no, I'm not a lawyer, no, I'm not a prosecutor, no, I'm not a judge, but I have worked with a lot of different multiple judges from males, females, and I can say that I am very respected in the courthouse, and I can say that he does depend and lean on me a lot and trust my decisions and values of what I oversee daily. And it's likewise with him that I trust and lean and depend on his opinion, because it's almost like you're a parent, you're a boss, you're an overseer, you're a supervisor, because we're all one big happy family. And when you're dealing with males and females from the age of possibly, I think, 20 some years old, all the way up to 40 some years old, you have a lot of different mood swings, attitudes. And I mean, he does an amazing job with diffusing a lot of it and keeping the peace and decorum in our courtroom. So I want to thank you all for giving me this moment to speak on my team's behalf. I do have another coworker of mine who did come in with me for some moral support for our judge and our boss that we care dearly for. Thank you. Any questions? No. Have a good day.
Amy McNeil.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I'm here to represent a new group at the Glendale Branch Library. We recently began meeting to recognize our white privilege, our implicit biases, and how we can better listen to and raise BIPOC voices. Our plan is to meet regularly and learn and take action when needed to support our colleagues. The first thing that I would like to say is to say thank you to the people who've been brave enough to publicly speak out and share their experiences with the public library, including Michael Torres and Stephen Lane. Also, thank you to Dr. Murtada, Ms. Payne, for taking quick action based on what we've recently heard. Thank you also to Dr. Jett and Bree Flannelly, who brought these issues to light. I want to also acknowledge all of those unnamed people who are speaking out behind the scenes and working within the library system to affect change. We want to stand to acknowledge our colleagues who continue to endure discrimination on the basis of race, gender identity, and sexual orientation, among others. They've not been heard and are scared to speak out. We hear them, and we want to be sure that they are heard by the library board. The library needs a better reporting system so that marginalized employees and those who stand with them can make their concerns known. If there were more people of color receiving these reports, there'd be greater trust in the system and the issues could more effectively be resolved. In addition, this would also make people more comfortable and willing to share. The Indianapolis Public Library personnel system needs a guarantee that there will not be retaliation for speaking out. This includes not just protection from being fired, demoted, or transferred, but also protections from being discredited or facing a work environment that is so hostile that an employee wants to resign. We need transparency in investigations and what specific discrimination people are experiencing so that we can be part of the solution. We understand that there's a level of confidentiality needed, but it's possible for information not to be shared or for information to be shared so that we know what steps are being taken to address these discriminatory problems. Those who speak to the library board meetings are asked to provide their full name and address, which is a problem because people who wish to speak publicly about discrimination they've experienced are forced to put themselves at risk of receiving threats from others who would then now know their name and their address. The library work environment is increasingly stressful for all of us. Although many of us are not personally facing discrimination, we all feel the heaviness of our colleagues' pain on our shoulders. We cannot imagine what they are experiencing. We are listening, we hear them, we want to do better, we can do better. We want change, policy change, and we want them to feel safe and welcomed and valued. They deserve not to have to wait any longer for that which we all deserve. Thank you.
Can I have your name again?
Amy McNeil,
Amy McNeil.
M-A-C-N-E-I-L.
Neil.
Thank you.
It's M-A-C and Neil. Okay. Molly Beaumont.
Hello, thank you. I'm Molly. I am a children's librarian at the East Washington branch of the Indianapolis Public Library, and I'm also the chair of the LGBT committee for staff. I'm here. I printed a document. It's available at the door. I also shared it with the board earlier today. I'm here to talk about the current policies that we have in place regarding our collection. And on the front for our viewers, it's the power chart on where you fall and how powerful you are in an institution or organization. On the second page, you'll find a screenshot of our catalog. You can find, it says recent staff lists and recently reviewed books. In an email I sent last March in the early days of the pandemic, emailed two managers. And I quote, I emailed redacted already. Is there a way to highlight our ebooks and streaming videos on BiblioCommons? In other words, I'm reviewing ebooks, audiobooks, and streaming movies, but the reviews are hidden because of the website features recently reviewed books and DVDs. I've been creating lists of digital resources, but it might help to include our e-content on our homepage. Fast forward, we're still struggling to highlight e-content. This leads to my first point in our collections material selection policy. The criteria, the library provides an overall collection that is up to date with paid attention to rapidly changing subject areas. The example that I included is from an article I found on the Indianapolis Reporter. It was an interview, and the example shows that we have one e-copy with two holds. So my questions are, why is there only one copy? And like I mentioned before, the ebook does not display on the homepage, so that is a problem. But it also leads to my next point. Criteria: author, publisher credibility. Works by best-selling authors and well-known authors, directors, and musicians are selected. Self-published works are essentially up for further review. But what happens when we discover that the author is racist, homophobic, xenophobic, etc. after publication? What do we do when publishers recall or discontinue published materials and we discover it on our shelves? We have a recalled book on our collection. We also have a Dr. Seuss book that has KK cats with a K for cats that I sent an email, and the response, we did not feel it was the best time to do anything about this one during the controversy over the other 6 titles that were identified as problematic by the publisher. It is already very controversial, and we want to let the fire die down and address it in the time frame our team has already mentioned. Children's books, going into the next collection or section, selection of diverse and inclusive materials. I have a screenshot of the CCBC, which is the Children's Cooperative Book Center in Madison, Wisconsin. It works to find books by POC, and it doesn't mention queer folks and authors, but it does kind of point out who's being published and how many books are about specific races and identities. The library endeavors to create a balanced collection that embraces and promotes diversity and inclusion. The collection will serve to preserve, promote, highlight, and give a voice to individuals and groups with varying backgrounds, experience, styles, perception, and value beliefs. What happens when we are asked to suggest titles for purchase, but the majority are ebooks or self-published materials? Hashtag we need diverse books and hashtag dear publishers are working to dismantle the problem. And as a library, we should be doing the same by demanding publishers make the material available to further support DEI initiatives. Thanks in part to the LGBT committee, the title Transgender, One Shade of Gray, the Legal Implications is no longer on order, which is great, but it's still available on our website as a suggest for purchase when there's another popular title called Be an Inclusion Ally, the ABCs of LGBT is not. Too often these, sorry, let me backtrack. We need more pro materials and fewer pro hate. From a quote from Dear Publishers, we do not have a blanket of cancel culture, nor do we have a blanket acceptance of harmful ideas for the interest of free speech, devil's advocacy, or multiple perspectives. Too often, these phrases are met euphemisms that grant acceptance of racism, homophobia, transphobia, sexism, ableism, classism, and other harmful practices. We need to start change today. The next page is an example of a book that we currently have. We're talking about being transparent. There has to be a set standard or ratio to items ordered based on requests. This example of 10 copies with 4 holes, especially at the public library where we have to be frugal with our budgets, does not make sense. It would give peace of mind to our community members if there were solid data to refer to, knowing that we have to serve patrons who view us as other. We need explicit standards. And then I just have a picture of the LGBT committee. Please note that these folks are not current members of the LGBT committee and they had no vote in the matter. I did get a vote of 6-2 before 4:30 this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly.
Thank you, Molly.
Leon Bates.
Good evening, good afternoon. My name is Leon Bates. I'm not an employee of the library, just a longtime user, longtime constituent. But what I have heard from people I know who are library employees, and I've known several for many years, is stress and frustration. And what I've read in the newspaper is troubling. And I've heard someone here say that you're going to take some type of diversity training in the coming days. I would ask that you take that training seriously and that you listen to those who are trying to put on the training. As someone who has actually worked through a job where there was serious toxic, hostile attitudes, not prevalent, but just rampant through the system, that is a stressful environment to work in. It's stressful for the employees, it's stressful for the supervisors. And the one thing that I learned more than anything else is that those in leadership and management have to take it seriously, and you must make sure that your next level supervisors take it equally seriously, because it won't do a nickel's worth of good for you to take it seriously, but those below you do not. There's a difference between promise and practice. And quite often, boards and committees in management makes promises, but the practice does not bear out what needs to be done. I'm not going to rattle on, and I'm not going to, take up your time, but I did want to say that you do have some long-term employees, some dedicated employees who are feeling the stress of a toxic, hostile working environment. And this is not coming from people who are just sitting around griping and complaining and so on and so forth. These are people who are concerned. They're concerned about their own well-being, their co-workers, and the overall operation, and how that will affect people like me. So please, you seem to have a problem, take it seriously and address it. Because if you don't, I can guarantee you this will get worse long before it ever gets better. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Bates. we're now joined by our other board member, Jim Mulholland. Give me 1 second, Jim, if you don't mind. Ray, are you able to hear us, Ray? Don't drive, park. All right. I think he is because he smiled. Go ahead,
Okay.
sir.
Yes, my name is Jim Mulholland, and I am a longtime supporter and advocate of this library system. And I was realizing that the last time I spent time at these board meetings was about 15 years ago. And it was when a group of us fought the move to close many of the smaller branches where people of color could walk. And this was a huge concern to many of us. And so there was a strong effort. And I will say the board was responsive. And those branches are almost all still open. And I'm very grateful that that board saw the seriousness of that issue. So 15 years ago, we were dealing with buildings. It looks like now we're dealing with the people in those buildings. And so tonight, I'm just here to express my support for the employees of the system, especially people of color, and to encourage the board to take this extremely seriously. I think, speaking as a white person, it is so easy for me to ignore or diminish the complaints of people of color. It's so easy for me not to see what is so obvious to them. And it's so easy for me to excuse what I often unconsciously do because I have the best intent. And we're not talking about intent as the gentleman just said previous to me, we're talking about impact and what is the impact on employees in the system. So I just want to once again express my support for the people of color in the system, for all persons who feel discriminated against in any way. And to end with perhaps what I think is the most important thing, and it's something that Kendi Abram has pointed out, is our goal is not to be non-racist. Our goal is to be anti-racist. And so I would just encourage us as a community and the board to take that view. It's not a neutral kind of thing. It's a proactive and aggressive thing that we need to do. So thank you for this time, and we will be watching in anticipation of good things from the board and from the system.
Margaret Webb.
Hello, my name is Marguerite Webb. I live on the corner of like 10th and Beaux-Arts near East Side. Up until 1 month ago, I was an employee of the library system. I was an employee at the Martindale Brightwood branch of the system. I want to thank Bree and Dr. Jett for being the first to kind of be vocal. I'm sorry. I want to thank Dr. Jett and Bree for being vocal about their experiences with the system, and their willingness to step out has given me the impetus to share my experiences as well. So I joined the system January 2019. As a sub, I got a full-time position at the Martindale Brightwood branch November 2019. That branch, when I started, had 4 full-time staff members. We were completely understaffed and overworked. And that, I think, points to one of the larger problems of the NDPL system, is that the smaller branches, there is not less need in those communities, right? We still have strong needs for staff. We still need to be well trained and well supported. And the system as a whole has given a lot of privilege to larger branches, Lawrence, Pike, and does not give support to smaller branches like Martindale, Brightwood, East Washington, those kinds of things. I had a really difficult time. The pandemic was stressful for all of us. It was harrowing for all of us. It was harrowing for all of our patrons as well. But to have that base level of stress and then add on top of that statements from coworkers like, Marguerite, can you go ahead and clean that up for me? Or from other coworkers, as if I'm not environmental services. Or a coworker who could not get my name right and kept confusing me with the other Black girl on staff. This was reported to HR and nothing happened. So when you ask your staff to report things to HR, it doesn't do anything because there's no changes that happen. I've been asked by coworkers, I hear you're a member of the LGBT community. So which one are you? L, G, B, or T? Where are you on the spectrum? Right? It's these kinds of things. When we're talking about equity and diversity and inclusion, it's not just a race issue. It's not a gender issue. It's the system as a whole has to be so much better about holding people accountable for the things that they say. It's hard to get up and motivate yourself to come to work every day when those are the kinds of things that you're facing. And I eventually ran out of the motivation and I quit. I am living on savings until something else comes because I just could not continue to work in this kind of environment anymore. It was breaking me. I just want to give my support to all of the Black and Brown, LGBT, other marginalized communities that are still working for the NDPL system because I know that it is hard. I know that it is hard. And I wish that this board and this moment of Bree speaking out actually motivates our system to make some real changes. Yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Here's one last name, but she's with an organization that already spoke, so I don't think she's gonna, Crystal. She works for the courts too. Do we have, Angie, do we have any patron comments to be read this evening?
No, we don't, Judge.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we'll move on to approval of the minutes of the executive and regular and special meeting. The regular meeting was May 24th, 2021. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting held on May 24th?
So moved.
There's a second.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and second to approve the minutes of the May 24th meeting. Angie, can we have a call to roll?
Mr. Biederman,
Approve.
Mr. Bixby,
Approved.
Dr. Matata,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
Point of order. We've had a number of comments from the community, and I'm not familiar with us just going ahead with no response. Is this the way that usually occurs with the board, that we don't say anything after each of the responses? I'm noting that there were several times that stress was named, that people said that they're asking us to take this seriously. They're asking that we support the smaller branches, that we need a better reporting system. There were so many things that came up. At what point do we actually have a discussion about these comments?
Well, normally, in my experience, when we ask questions of it, or at the time the speaker is up, if you want to comment, Dr. Matata, you're fine.
I think just wanting to thank everyone that did come up. I noted Renita Mall, Amy McNeil, Molly Beaumont, Leon Bates, Leon Bates, Jim Mulholland, Margaret Webb, did I pronounce it correctly? With all of these comments, I find it so important that we take time to recognize bias, just as Amy said, that we take time to recognize that the books for equity call for us to think very differently about our policies and procedures, that it's critical that we recognize that there are staff members who are experiencing stress and frustration, and that we are being called as a board to take training seriously and not merely as a, I call it the tie-dye method, but I'm paraphrasing. That's also that Jim has said, white folks are saying that we need to take it seriously too, and that he's given support. And he sees that oppression is not just about being fighting racism, but to be anti-racist. And then he went on and Marguerite said, how does it mean that we are understaffed at our smaller branches? All of these things must be recognized. They must be addressed. And I want to thank each person for taking the time and the courage, including Renita, who spoke to the character of Judge Salinas as well. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to not include you, Renita. And so how do we as a board recognize that policies, procedures, the things that we do are being taken very seriously by a public, and that the words that are being said must be taken very seriously. And I want you to know that I can speak for Paula Murtada
Pat Payne.
and Pat Payne and all the rest of the board members that we will have a follow-up discussion about these, and it won't be just a discussion for the sake of talk. One of the things that we said is, and I had a conversation with one of the board members recently, and she said, we need to take seriously the pain that we're hearing and rectify and act in an expedient way, not a long-term only way. I think that's correct in paraphrasing. So thank you, but we've got work to do.
Yeah.
We've got serious work to do. And that work will mean that we have to affect change. And it can't just be, years and years from now. This is not a journey, because journeys have a destination point. This is a long, long haul, but also immediate things that we must do to address the issues that have been raised to us. So thank you.
On behalf of myself, I want to echo those comments and simply say, I think two people said it, that they're going to be watching, and if we don't have results, then they know that there was just talk. So we understand that as a board. Do any other board members want to have any comments? Want to say anything?
I just very much want to second everything that my colleague just said. Absolutely.
Sure. And I want to thank everyone again for being here, taking time out of your day. All right, we'll move on to item B, which is the executive session minutes that we had for the June 14th meeting that we had. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the executive session that we had June 14th?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Angie, can we have a call to roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Biederman,
Approved.
Mr. Bixby,
Approved.
Dr. Matada,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to, the motion carries, to the committee reports, the Finance Committee. The chair is Dr. Payne.
Please come to the mic.
Good evening.
Good evening.
evening.
I have two very short items. I have our treasurer's report, and I'm not sharing because I tried to connect to the Zoom and I had feedback, so I figured you guys don't want to hear that. But I have very quick things that you have in your packet. For the month of May, our expenditures and our revenues were as expected.
Can you tell us what page you're on?
I am
Please.
on page 17 of the PDF,
Okay, thank
and
you.
it says Treasurer's Report, page 1.
Thank you.
That is just the operating fund, and I'm just going to briefly mention. On the expenditure side, we have spent 17 million to date, year to date. That's about 33% of our budget. And we've gone through about 42% of the year. So we're in pretty good shape there. Of course, everything is not always spent on a level basis. There's some months we spend more than others. Some months we have more than one payroll. I mean, more than two payrolls. So just keep that in mind. If there are no other questions, or if there are no questions, I guess I should say, on the treasurer's report, I would like to ask that it get approved for audit. Or if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? I
Then
move
mo-
approval.
Is there a motion to approve the treasurer's report? Is
I move approval.
there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the treasurer's report? Seeing none, Angie, can we have a call to roll, please?
Mr. Biederman,
Approve.
Mr. Bigsby,
Approved.
Dr. Matada,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
and Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
All right, my next item is item 5B. That's on page 34 of your report of the PDF. And that is Resolution 23, 2021. And that's a request for transfers between classifications. As you guys know, whenever we have to transfer from one category to another, we need to seek your approval for them. These transfers relate to the changes that we made in our purchasing area. So we're needing a transfer to capital for that. We're also moving that monument sculpture, the public art installation that was on the circle. We're moving that to Central. And there's some repairs that need to be done to that. So there's a transfer request for that as well. And that's a $30,000 transfer request. And then we are seeking to increase our supplies for communications because we needed to buy a few additional equipment for this hybrid model of board meetings. So the total request here is to transfer $33,000 from other services and charges to supplies and capital outlay.
Do we have enough funds in there so we're gonna be okay across the board?
Oh, yes. We're fine in the categories that we're transferring from.
Any other questions from the board? Their motion, or did you want to move, Pat?
I moved it. Yes.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on resolution 23-2021? Seeing none, can we have a call to roll, Angie?
And Mr. Biederman,
Approve.
Mr. Bigsby,
Approved.
Dr. Matada,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
and Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, VJ.
All right, we'll move on to item 6, diversity policy, HR committee. The chair is Curtis.
So Judge, we had our meeting, our meeting was last week, and we had lengthy discussion about some of the forms of communication we want to send across as it relates to human resources, and Dr. Murtada led that discussion, so I'll go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Murtada.
Thank you so very much. I'm clear that the climate that the library has presented over the number of years are ones that we want to improve. And the climate improvement process is what I submitted to the board. And thank you to the board members who have approved the climate improvement process. Just for the sake of making sure that we highlight the main things that this is about, not only existing, but past and emerging challenges to inclusion, diversity, racial, and most important, social justice. We want to make sure that the improvement process is intentional, strategic, collaborative, transparent, and a coordinated effort. And that commitments to racial equity are now visible in our public domain. This is in our report that goes out to the board. But we want to make sure that it has some teeth in it, that it's not just merely another document that gets sent out. And so part of this is to recognize that an improvement process has to be multidimensional. We have to pay attention to the morale of the staff. We have to pay attention to people expressing how they feel as a part of this organization. We also have to pay attention to a number of other aspects, including communication adequacy. Some of the comments that have made here is that the flow of information is one that is of concern. We want to make sure that it's not constrained from one level to another. We want to make sure that there are critical conversations, that it's not always collaborative, that at times there must be critique of the existing policies. Hello, Ray, how are you? Just going through some of the highlights of the improvement process. We also want to talk about power. We cannot talk about climate without talking about power. And I want to make sure that we do address the issues of power in our plan for this climate improvement process. We want to make sure that the human people, the people who work in this library and the larger community see that the board is taking this very seriously. And as one of the board members said to me, there must be some sense of responsiveness now. There cannot be a sense of putting it off for a long period of time. So we need to be able to indicate that we are open to ideas, to criticism, and to thoughts that we may not feel comfortable with. But there's also the issue of problem solving, because there are ways to sense problems and to know that when people say there is a problem, that we are able to pay attention to it. I am planning to lead a team that includes individuals not only from the library, but external individuals to the library as well. And that team for the improvement process is one that I shared with the board. To pay attention to it, to discuss socially constructed categories of power, to understand that Black women and men, the LGBTQ plus community, the physical abilities and disabilities, that individuals from every kind of diverse background sees that this board is going to take this work very seriously and look at improvement in a way that it has not done before, because it's not a one-time event. It is not a one-time event. We have to consider who can speak and who is silenced, whose knowledge is privileged and whose is not. We have to review the administration and working with the staff to challenge stereotypes, prejudices, and privilege in order for us to make a difference in this climate of the library. And most important, we need to pay attention to the methodologies that we're going to collect information on or data. The methodologies must be ones that we can do and keep confidentiality, at the same time, be transparent with. The legal counsel here has warned that we must pay attention to confidentiality and how we must do that. And at the same time, get a wide berth of information so that we can make decisions. Again, our first obligation is to understand, but to also make sure that we act. And that action cannot be pushed out for a long period of time. Within 2 weeks, we plan to begin this active movement within 2 weeks. Thank you very much.
I just wanted to underscore what you said, Carla, when you said it would be confidential.
Yes.
Because there is a problem with trust level and it would have integrity. So I wanted to just bring that back out again and underscore it.
I appreciate you saying that. I was just recently working with some people in different organizations, and I shared with them what it meant to care. To care as an administrator is not just about the role and the responsibility. To care is to treat people with understanding and assuming that we're entering relationships that really speak to what we can do and speak with, as you said, confidentiality.
Mm-hmm.
But integrity when trust is broken is a hard thing, Pat.
Yeah.
And when trust is broken, and some people have trust and other people do not, we have to act in different ways. And so I understand the notion of confidentiality. Not everybody's going to come forward and speak. So how do we actually collect data or information, make it so that it can be confidential, and then at the same time do what must be done in order to act with integrity and to do it with all due speed and understanding that this is not just about a bureaucratic system.
Does the board have other comments or questions?
Just one. I just wanted to thank Dr. Murtada and Dr. Payne for really spearheading this effort. Dr. Murtada, you've done a ton of work on this in a very short amount of time.
Thank you.
And I commend you for, taking that first step, right? Because it's just the first step. And it's very important that we all understand that and everybody understands that. And that this is a process and it will evolve and change and we're going to learn things over time and that will impact the process and how it looks going forward.
Absolutely. And I appreciate that. Any type of research, inquiry, study, change process has to be responsive. We have changing demographics that are a key part of this city. And as we change the demographics, as another board member said, we know we have to think about the sensitivity to every single difference that we can. I shared before, I'm a part of and closely connected to the deaf community. And I know that people who have hearing challenges and are not always served as the best that they can be. So how do we respond to abilities and disabilities? How do we respond to issues that may not always be overtly apparent? This is a part of paying attention to the changing demographics and doing it in a way that surfaces some of the most challenging issues that we might confront, and doing it as a board that is not afraid to take on a difficult challenge.
Thank you, Ray and Dr. Furtado. Any other questions from the board? Curtis, anything else as far as your group, your committee?
No.
Okay, we'll move on to item 7, Facilities Committee, and back to Dr. Murtada.
I respectfully ask that I no longer be the chair of the committee, but I'm going to turn to Sharon Smith, who will lead the report going forward for the Facilities Committee. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you. We have tonight for you one action request. It's item 7A. It's on page 36 of the PDF. This is resolution 24-2021. NDPL facility staff recommends board approval of the attached action to accept the conditional guaranteed maximum price proposal for the Glendale branch replacement project from Powers and Strens Construction. The conditional guaranteed maximum price proposal is for the structural steel subcontract required for the project. Powers and Sons has been monitoring the current market situation relating to the pricing and procurement of structural steel for the project. I'm sure you have all heard about the issues with materials as well as timelines for delivery of a lot of materials, but we wanted to be able to get the steel bid secured before the prices continue to escalate, as well as to get on the docket to actually receive the material in time for us for our project schedule. So following Powers and Sons recommendation, decision was made to procure the structural steel subcontractor early prior to the completion of the bidding documents. The early bidding and subsequent contracting of structural steel will mitigate the impact of significant material delivery lead times and resulting price increases relating to the work. The project was bid to meet the utilization goals established by the board for minority, women, veteran, and disability-owned business enterprises, to promote the awareness of the opportunity for businesses to participate in the project. Powers and Sons, working with NDPL diversity, inclusion, purchasing, and facility staff, engaged in these activities. Prior to the bidding phase, Powers and Sons actively engaged with vendors to ensure open, competitive, and public bidding of the project with the target of exceeding NDPL utilization goals. During the bidding phase of the project, the notice to bidders was sent to vendors in the Powers and Sons database, as well as the City of Indianapolis OMWBD certification database, and to vendors known to NDPL to be interested in providing services to NDPL. Working with KRM Architecture, Powers and Sons prepared and issued bidding documents on May 7th containing the steel subcontract packages. They received 7 bids. On May 27th, Powers and Sons met with the apparent low bidder, Indiana Steel Fabricating Incorporated,
And they have determined that they are the lowest responsive and responsible bidder at $752,000. You have the tab sheet there that gives the bids that were received. And wanted to emphasize that this Indiana Steel Fabricating will be a tier 2 contractor for the guaranteed maximum price. Review of their required post-bid information, including the application for the MBE, WBE, VBE, DOBE program waiver documents, the good faith efforts Indiana Steel made toward meeting the utilization goals. Indiana Steel Fabricating will be using MJ Shoot Insurance for their required bonding services. Relative to this specific bid package, there are a limited number of certified vendors capable of providing these services. The market forces leading NDPL to issue an early bid package for the structural steel impacted the 2 specifically invited MBE vendors to make the business decision to not submit a prime bid for the work. Harmon Steel did submit quotes for the steel erection services to some of the prime bidders, including Indiana Steel. Harmon Steel was not selected as the erector by Indiana Steel due to pricing. I did ask Russell Lewis from Powers and Sons to attend tonight, specifically to address any of the bid processes that you might have. And I would like to pause at this time to ask if you do have any questions up to this point.
Any questions, board members? TD?
Thank you very much for making sure that you go through the kinds of opportunities for minority businesses to compete for this opportunity and support Powers and Sons.
Yes, Hope.
Thank you, Judge. Just for clarification for those of us who don't know all of the lingo, what does it mean to be a tier 2 contractor for the GMP?
So I would like to ask Russell if you would come up to the table here, to the microphone. Russell is our general contractor for the project. Thank you for coming. If you could answer.
If someone is tier 2, it means that they're actually will be a subcontractor to Powers and Sons. So Powers and Sons, as the tier 1 contractor, holds the direct contract with the library to provide services for the Glendale branch. And we will in turn be issuing a contract to Indiana Steel Fabricators as tier 2.
Okay. And then the other question is, was the time, so the timing of this bid was moved up because of the, I guess, the variability in the price of steel.
Right.
And is the 2 MBs that did not bid, was the timing a consideration for them in terms of why they didn't bid?
No, the timing wasn't an issue. It was really just their own business decisions on their availability and then where their numbers came in relative to the overall pricing, and then having to maintain a fiscal responsibility to the budget. Our reason for bidding early is even if we won't need steel until January of 2022. But there's such demand in the market that we had to bid early in hopes that we'll actually have the steel in 2022. That's how much demand's out there right now. So.
And is there any explanation about the variance in the cost for Indiana Steel and HG Metals? I mean, why is it $100,000 more? Any sense of that?
It's just variations in the market, and that's normal in bidding to have swings in pricing. We have worked with Indiana Steel Fabricators before, so the fact that they are substantially lower does not necessarily represent a less product, since that their costs are lower. Mm-hmm. And they also provide their own fabrication and installation, so that gives them somewhat of a competitive advantage in the marketplace. But overall, this contract represents a small percentage of the total dollar value for the project. So we will be bidding, the rest of the project is actually out for bid right now. Mm-hmm. So we anticipate a greater level of participation going forward. And we did have a virtual outreach meeting a couple of weeks ago. We had very good participation in that meeting, especially with it being virtual. So we're looking forward to some better results, so to speak, when we take those bids in a couple of weeks, few weeks.
Okay. All right, thank you for the clarification.
Sure, no problem.
Do any of the other board members have any questions?
No, I appreciate your coming forward and sharing some more about what it means to have these different bids. I had to learn the same way that our other board members. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate this.
Thank you.
Dr. Murtada, any?
We have a motion to approve.
I-
the resolution.
Yeah,
I-
no,
Oh,
is
I'm
there any
sorry.
other
I do have,
witnesses or information?
I do want to go ahead and continue if I could, just to clarify something that we changed. So what hasn't changed is that this is a component of the entire project. And so, as Russell said, the bids are out now for the rest of the project. We will be bringing back the total guaranteed maximum price for you in July. So this is, tonight is just for the steel. And to make that more clear, we did amend the resolution to include that language. And you should have received that this evening. And that's the changes that were made are highlighted. And it is just a clarification that this is only for the steel tonight.
Any questions from the board?
I just appreciate the clarification about the cost of steel and trying to make sure that we get a good bid in before it increases, or because the demand is, and the wait list is so important to attend to.
Dr. Murtada, is there a motion?
I have a motion to accept this.
The second on resolution 24.
Second.
Any further discussion on the matter? As far as resolution 24-2021, Angie, can we have a call to roll, please?
Mr. Biederman,
Approved?
Mr. Bixby,
Approved.
Dr. Murtada,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson. Reverend Robinson,
Approved, sorry.
thank you. Judge Salinas
Approved.
and Ms. Tribble. Approved. Thank you.
Dr. Murtada, anything else, man?
Not at this time.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank-
That's the end of facilities. That's the end for facilities.
This is probably out of order, but 6 years ago, when I came on the board, I think it was 6 years ago, the Flanner House Library was closed. And I see Brandon Cosby in the audience tonight, and I just wanted to congratulate you on opening up. It's not a library, but it sure is nice, your own bookstore. Yeah. Wonderful, and I hope everybody here takes the opportunity to go over to Flanner House
And buy books.
and buy books, right?
Welcome, sir. All right, we'll move on to the Library Foundation update. Reverend Robinson.
Thank you, Judge. Every month, the Library Foundation provides an update to the library board. Many thanks to all who made it possible for the CBLC Book Fest and Juneteenth celebration program held on June 18th. We were also proud to see our colleagues, Nichelle Hayes, recognized as Library Journal Mover and Shaker. To celebrate the grand opening of the West Perry branch, ceramic book tiles will be offered at the location for reduced prices starting at $50 through September 17th. This is a great opportunity to permanently commemorate your support and honor a friend or loved one. To order your ceramic book tile, please complete the following form and return to the foundation. Congratulations to everyone who is part of the 2021 Summer Reading Program and workshops. You are inspiring children, teens, and adults to expand their horizons through reading and dynamic lifelong learning experiences. We would like to thank our major sponsors, the Indianapolis Foundation Library Fund, in Indianapolis, Indiana, Tracy Haddad Foundation, a fund for Central Indiana Community Foundation, Nina Mason Pulliam Charitable Trust, Mary Frances Rubley and Jerry Hermer, Baker's CPA Baker and Daniels CPAs and Advisors, Citizens Energy Gas, Indiana Pacers, Indianapolis Colts, Indy 11, Lilly Endowment, Myers, Office of Lawrence Township Trustees, and so many others. Thank you so much for your support. Donors, the foundation thanks 76 donors who made gifts last month. The following are top corporate and foundation contributors. If you have an opportunity to thank these donors, we would be grateful. College Savings Bank, First Merchants Bank, Indianapolis Indians, Lewis Wagner LLP, Myers, Smith Associations, Teachers Credit Union. This month, the Library Foundation is proud to provide more than $350,000 for library programs and initiatives. Examples of major initiatives supported include 1,000 books before kindergarten, Center for Black Literature and Culture, IPS and Charter Schools Library Card Program, On the Road to Reading, McFadden Lectures, and the Teen Zone. Judge, that ends my report for this meeting, and thank you.
Thank you, Reverend. Any questions with respect to the Library Foundation update on the board? Seeing none, thank you, sir. We'll move on to item number 9, report from the Chief Executive Officer. Jackie?
Thank you, Judge. Item number 9A1 is in your packet. This is our routine proposal for finances, personnel, and travel. This month, there are no travel claims to be brought before the board, but I would like to take a few moments to talk through the rather lengthy list of personnel actions that we have this month. As we are resuming a much greater level of service, having been on a reduced service during the COVID times, all of our buildings are really coming back to a much greater level of activity, and many more staff are in fact being engaged across the system. We also have a number of changes that are going into effect in the last month related to different aspects of the strategic plan. So I would like to call attention in here to all of the appointments related to the opening of the West Perry branch. And you will see in here quite a few. They include people who transferred from the former Fountain Square Library, but also many employees who have applied for and been selected to join the team at West Perry. Another large group of employees that are here today on this list are employees who have been formerly known as activity guides at Central Library. This is a group where we have changed the title to Youth Multimedia Learning Specialists in order to more clearly define the role and its technology-related focus for youth. This title will also help us offer job seekers a better understanding of what the job role encompasses when they do in fact consider applying for the position. And we have quite a few of these folks. The strategic plan talks a lot about expanding our work in technology and multimedia, and this title change reflects that. Another title change that we have made is to change in the outreach department from Public Services Associates to a new title that is a Public Associate 2 for outreach. And it's to point out the fact that outreach's activity is different than other branch libraries. The staff and outreach are involved in the On the Road to Reading program. They're also involved in aspects of programming and the delivery of materials to our daycares and preschools and things. So their roles are quite different than what Public Service Associate 2 in general would be. As we have continued the work to try to revamp our approach to security and try to have a more proactive, positive role for security, we started out with the position title of Building Ambassador, thinking that that would be helpful. But what we have since found is that the individuals involved in that work do in fact need to have it clear that they do have a role in helping security in our buildings. So they're not police, they're not guards, but they are in fact library security assistants. And so that title change has also been put in place. Under the separations portion of the report, I would like to call attention to and celebrate Monica Rose Kiesel. Monica Rose has retired from the library after 42 years of working here at the library. And she spent a great portion of that time as a processing assistant in CMSA. So that's a great career. The last group is a group of reclassifications related to our computer lab staff at Central Library. If you reflect on the actions that are called for in the strategic plan to really take us forward on a digital roadmap and develop a greater level of activity about making technology accessible to the community, trying to enhance how strong the staff skills are on technology and how well we are doing to really facilitate getting programs out into the community, not just at Central, but out across all of our locations, really taking our technology programming to where the community is that has that greatest need. This has called for us to revamp our entire approach to the public computer lab staff. And they are now going to be referred to as technology learning specialists. And their role is really going to be supporting the digital roadmap and the digital journey that's described in our strategic plan. And so you see here a number of individuals. These are folks that you may have seen at times with the Tinker Station, or you may have seen them teaching classes. We had lots of requests from the public in all of our surveying for the strategic plan to get this kind of skill, get this kind of class training and assistance out across the community. And this team will now be able to move forward on that. And they have some very exciting plans that we'll be bringing back to you along the way in the months ahead. So those are the rather long list of staffing changes this month, but I would at this time present resolution 25-2021 for your approval.
Any questions from the board?
There are just a couple of dates that I wanted to ask about.
Okay.
Under separations, there's an effective date of August 3rd, 2020, the fifth bullet. Is that a typo or?
For Grace Bolton,
Yes.
I believe that would be a typo. Hope.
Okay. And then the other on the reactivations is a reactivation of June 14th, 2020. I'm assuming that's a typo too.
Oh, my goodness.
2022. I'm sorry.
22. Thank you. That we definitely would not know at this point if that would be happening yet in 22. So
Well, it's a clairvoyant, right?
That's a good eye.
thank you very much. So, Mr. President, if we could consider those friendly amendments to correct the document, I'd appreciate it. Thank you,
Of
Hope.
course. Any other questions from the board? With those amendments, is there a motion to approve resolution 25-2021?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on the resolution before the board? Seeing none.
I
Angie?
just wanted
Oh,
to
I'm
say
sorry.
that making technology, these changes to make technology accessible to more people in the larger community, especially as we think about equity of opportunity, is very important. And so I want to really speak to the importance of that. The notion that we're making technology and having technology learning specialists really does speak to the importance of educating, but providing access to those who would not ordinarily have access. So I think that's a very significant move. I also think that understanding that names and how we name things are very important. And so the idea that we have library security folks and not acting as if they're not security would be bogus. So I'm glad to see that we're still recognizing the name of security because that's what they do. The youth multimedia learning specialist, the fact that we would have staff that really pay attention to how young people are using media, they can teach us a whole lot, by the way. We have a lot to can learn from them. But the fact that we have this focus on the technology for young people is a good thing, and we should continue to really be supportive of how we engage with our young people in technology.
I concur.
Can I just, Jackie, can you give me some more information on the library security assistant? You said they would be in uniform. Just give me some more, because I know that was really a point of contention with the Warren and the Pike libraries.
Yes, Pat, this reference here to these two individuals, this is part of the update report that John Helling gave us last month, I believe. And we were talking about our eventual movement away from having uniformed third-party security guards in our building and bringing our security services in-house so that we can take a larger role in their training and in making sure that they are familiar enough with the library's operation and, most importantly, our values, so that they really are reflecting our values as they provide a safe and secure environment. So our hope is to have that movement away from so much of a security guard presence. We hope to have this in place towards the end of the year. But we began, for example, with these two pilots in these two branches right now. So right now we're offering a hybrid system. We still have a security contractor, but in some of the buildings, we've started to bring on these people who are on our own staff, and they are carrying out this role. So this is the first experiments in bringing this in-house. But it's all a result of the conversations from several years ago about trying to move away from policing to something more positive, something more engaging, being concerned and watchful that security and safety can be assured to all of our patrons, but doing it in a way that affords us better opportunity to really reflect the kind of service we want people to have in our buildings and how we want them to be treated.
The G4S, did I get that right?
That is our contractor, yes, Pat.
So they are still working with us?
We still have them in many of our buildings because this, as John was explaining at a previous meeting, this is a process to move away from this. And it's a very big change for us.
Yeah.
And finding, the right people. That's why we're doing this pilot, to understand exactly what kind of people to hire, to make sure that we're getting the job descriptions right. We don't want to just take the job description of a contract security guard and assume we can turn that into one of our people and it'll work. We think it needs more thought than that. And these branches were locations that were willing and interested in helping us shape what that role looks like for these new people coming onto our payroll.
I commend you for that.
It's a long process, though. Please bear with us. This is taking time.
But at least it's gotten started. So
Absolutely,
that's
Pat,
good.
yes.
There was another concern about the kind of training that the G4S were receiving. Will they be receiving the racial equity training like many of our employees are? Because there was a concern that they were just doing diversity training. And we had, I think, right when COVID hit, we were getting ready to have a conversation.
We
with the
spent quite a bit of
execs.
time talking with the G4S managers and their training representative from the company itself, talking about what did they provide for their people.
Right.
Because we are not in a position to put their people through the training our people go through. But as we bring these new people into our organization, they will receive the same kind of training that the rest of our staff receives. Because while their duties will be related to safety and security, they will be library employees. And we will ask that they receive the same training, engage in the same kind of discussions that all of us are continuing to work on so that we better understand these challenges.
But my concern is for the G4S security people
Who
that
will be
still
phasing out.
contracted with us. We were getting ready to have conversations about the kind of training that they get as opposed to the kind of training we would like to see them have.
And we did have some of those conversations, and they did share with us some of their better training that they got to after a while. But now our focus is on phasing them out as a contractor. Okay,
But they're still here.
well, they're
so-
still here and they are receiving better training than they
And I-
were a couple of years ago.
I'd like to, was it Sharon, I would like to see what.
What they're
kind of
actually
training
getting.
That they're getting.
Okay,
and
let's
how they've
let's
improved.
arrange for, you have been involved in this quite a
Right.
bit, and we can provide an opportunity to meet with you offline and share with you what they've shared with us.
I'd appreciate that. Thank
Sure
you.
thing, we'll do it.
I think it should be shared with all of us.
Yeah.
I
really
do know,
should.
one of our committee meetings, they did come, one of the top executives did come. And they were more than willing to address some of the issues that the board has had in the past with their training. And sometimes you don't get that from a lot of contract security companies. They will typically have their own in-house training that they provide and say,
Right.
hey, this is what we give to people. But I do know when we had our committee meeting with executives from G4S, they were more than willing to train their people in accordance to what the board and what the library was looking for within their own personnel. So
What committee was this?
this was when we were discussing their,
Was
the
it
need
the
to
HR
approve their, no, it was in facilities.
Oh, okay.
It was the need at that moment to extend their contract, I believe, up
I
until
got you.
August.
Isn't it
Okay.
extended for 1 year, Jackie?
I believe it's
sorry?
until
Is it
August.
extended for 1 year or more? than that?
It was extended to the end of this year to give us time to develop the new in-house program of security. Because we were not able to just get
So
that
we're
done
not
overnight.
locked into a multi-year contract with them, right?
And they, right now, their contract, I believe, is to the end of this year.
I still want to see what kind of training.
Totally understand.
Thank you.
We'll go back to those materials for you, Pat, from that committee meeting.
Oh, but you have a question?
I did and I forgot it.
Dr. Matata, do you want to make a comment or a question? now?
Just, if we're going to be sharing, didn't want you to have the only eyeballs on it. I
Right.
think it'd be great
I'd
if
appreciate that.
we all had our eyeballs on whatever the training is. It has been an issue that was brought up last year. And I'm so glad to see that we are moving to phase them out
Me
and
too.
have this other form of support for our staff and for the patrons.
I concur.
Appreciate it.
Is there a motion to approve resolution 25? Oh, there's a motion. Is there first and second?
Yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion? Angie, can we have a call to roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Biederman,
Approved?
Mr. Bixby,
Approved.
Dr. Matata,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson.
Approved.
Thank you. Judge Salinas
Approved.
and Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
Motion carries. We'll skip to item 12. Future agenda items. This time is made available for discussion items not on the agenda, which are of interest to the board, library board members, and the opportunity is given to suggest items to be included in future library board meetings. Again, I think we have one big focus, which encompasses a lot of stuff. I think Curtis said there's going to be change, could be changes. That's how we go about it, but I'm glad we have that. But the provision is always there. If anybody feels that we need to look at new items as they come along, please feel free to share that with the board. All right, the next board, there's a board meeting scheduled for, or the board meeting scheduled for 2021. Let me see, when do we meet again? It's July 26th, correct?
Mhm. July 26th here.
Do we have any other business here? Or, Jackie? I don't think so. Any comments or questions from the board?
Just a note of appreciation for everyone that has come out and has shared their points and perspectives on what we can do and how we might proceed. And to make sure that as we do this, that you continue to hold us accountable for the changes, but also for what we might do both now and in the future. Amen.
I concur. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you.